may bago na namang variant ang COVID. So, ngayon, we will be talking about agriculture and ecosystem. This is still part of the whole lecture on the introduction to agriculture. So we've gone through the history of agriculture. Tapos nitong last week, we have just finished agriculture as industry, science, and a profession. This time, we'll be talking about the agriculture and ecosystem. So if you can see here in the screen, you could imagine the whole landscape of things you see around: water, mountain, plants, animals living in land and living on water. So these are what we will be talking in the next few meetings. Particularly, ano-ano mga relationship nito mga living things na ito, including the non-living things that you see here in the picture, like mountains, water, different types of bodies of water, microorganisms. Ano ang epekto nito sa atin as human? At ito naman ay hindi bago sa inyo, but these things greatly affect our humanity, the future of humanity, our survival. So kinakailangang parte ng agriculture na maintindihan natin where we are living on a larger scale. Paano tayo gumagala? What are our relationship with them? Because may nagsabi nga, if we disturb itong balanse na ito ng nature, we will be paying a steep price. Yan. So, we are on parte ng ating course coverage, the ecosystem, definition, component ng ecosystem, iba-ibang klase ng ecosystem, services, and the threats to agricultural production system will be the parts of the major lecture on agriculture and ecosystem. So going back again, ulit-ulit tayo, agriculture is the production of food and goods through farming. It is the source of world's food supply. But agriculture depends on parts of the ecosystem or the communities of organism. We are an organism. Humans are organism. Plants are organism. Animals are organism. Microorganisms, those that are unseen by human eyes. COVID-19 is an organism, and you can hear from news na very active sila, nag-mutate pa. They're reproducing themselves, and sometimes yung reproduction nila, yung pagkokopya sa sarili na alter. That's why mayroon tinatawag na variants. And variants could affect yung kanyang survival. Recently, itong Omicron ay proved to be more potent. Mas mabilis yatang dumami ito because of the protein. Mas marami, 42, something like that. So, organism interacting with each other and with their physical environment. So, kung titingnan nyo, bakit ang virus nito hindi natin maubos? Because they are living organism, and they have also the DNA na katulad din ng tao na who would want to survive. Like plants, they had their fruits and seeds para mag-survive. Fowl would have to lay eggs para mag-survive yung kanyang lahi. People would have our children para tayo mag-survive. So, nag-interplay lahat yan doon sa ecosystem, and almost the living things on the ecosystem would have that inherent DNA, no, na mag-survive, na ma-procreate ang kanyang sarili at dumami. No? Pero along the way, pag-aaralan natin, there could be some high points and low points ng pagdami nito mga organisms na ito which could affect other organisms. Ano? Kaya naman, very obvious sa atin when one organism suddenly explode in its population, another one would be affected. No? On the other hand, kapag ka ang isang set of organism umunti by some disturbance, even kung siya man na insekto, meron pa rin naaapektuhang ilang organism who are dependent on that certain type of population. So those are what we will be seeing in the next meetings pertaining to the ecosystem. At ito bilang tayo ay mga estudyante ng agriculture, dapat maintindihan natin as early as now bilang human, bilang estudyante, bilang nakakaintindi and would be the best candidate to protect our environment so that our children, your children in the future would still see or enjoy what we will be seeing, what we are seeing right now. And at ang tawag natin dyan ay sustainability. No? You would want to see na ang inyong mga anak ma-enjoy. So tayo ay minsan gumagawa ng mga artificial ecosystem para lamang ma-recreate, no, ang mga o ma-preserve natin ang ating environment. And we will be talking about that. Ano, merong environment na talagang natural, meron namang nilikha ng tao. No? At yan minsan, we try to incorporate science, physics, engineering, and other things, design, aesthetic, para makagawa ng isang ecosystem na magandang tirahan, magandang tingnan, no? And everybody's enjoying. Even villages, no, ay isang ecosystem. Kaya sa mga modern design ng mga tinatawag nating subdivision, nagbabari kasi ang subdivision depende sa estado ng mga status ng mga tumitira. Minsan may mga gardens na magaganda, may swimming pool, no, good roads. Yung iba naman wala, no, because low cost, no. So different of ecosystem, they are still ecosystem and they are man-made. At pag-usapan muna natin what is an ecosystem. Ano? An ecosystem is defined as all the organisms. You know? So these are composed of what we know, animals. Tayo naman ay sinasabing animals din. Ano? In a sense na ng ating biochemistry, we are considered animals, you know, and plants and microbes in a certain habitat. Habitat means where you live, where we live, where those animals survive, you know, yan ang mga habitat. Plus also the environment, yung palibot niya that they live, such as the soil, no? So sa mga microorganisms and even larger organisms like worms, makikita sa soil, a pond, no, or a mountainside. No? So natural ecosystem usually contain hundreds or even thousands of species of organisms and are thus very complex in their functioning. Last week, I visited the agri-ecotourism of Kabsu, no, alone. Meron kasi akong ginagawang video for KPNR. No? So, it so happened na I went there alone with my cellphone as camera. And tagal-tagal lang di ako nakakaikot doon. Although I was major part of the conceptualization noong agritourism. But after that, noon lang uli ako nakabalik kasi a new set of people took over doon sa second phase o yung pagpapaganda lang. So, during my walk around, I saw one very rare na plant. No? I'll post it nga pala mamaya. Papakita ko doon sa inyong grupo. Nakalimutan ko lang ilagay. And it's a wild plant na wala kang makikitang dahon. It's like bigla na lamang sumulpot yung isang parang kawayan na siguro mga 3 feet o 3 feet, no? And then may bunga siya sa tagiliran na from bottom upward, mag-i-start siya ng green, then orange, then red. It's like a rainbow yung kaniyang bunga na nakapalibot sa doon sa kanyang parang main trunk. You could not imagine unless I show it to you. So nakalimutan ko lang i-post, but I will be posting that sa inyong grupo maya-maya. Ang tinitingnan ko kung anong klase siya na halaman, pero hindi ma-identify nitong isang application ng plant identifier, no? Hindi siya makita, walang mag-match, So I believe this is a very rare type of plant na nakita ko doon. So my point is that it is part ng diversity ng ecosystem. Ito share ko siguro sa inyo ngayon, right now. Tingnan nyo sa inyo. Yun. Yan, tingnan nyo. Baka may nakakakilala sa inyo. But anyway, yan. Tingnan nyo sa group. You could see that. So, that's part of the natural ecosystem. And usually, madami talaga sila. Thousands of species of organisms are thus very complex in their functioning. There are a lot of things na hindi kayo mauubusan ng interest pagdating sa agriculture, even if you just take your camera and picture every diversity ng dahon ako nga gusto ko gumawa noong isang parang flipbook. Wala kang gagawin ko di picturean mo lang lahat ng klase ng dahon, and you would be amazed on the diversity of the pattern, colors, shape ng iba-ibang dahon. You could be 1,000 pages ng iyong collection ng mga dahon, but hindi mo kayang ubusin ang diversity ng dahon. At yung palang nakikita natin sa palibot. So, ganun kalaki ang pinag-uusapan nating ecosystem. And in contrast, the agricultural ecosystem, ito na yung mga farms like cornfield, an orchard. Pag sinabing orchard, halo-halo na yan. May fruit trees, may anything. At yan magagaling ang mga kabitenyo paggagawa ng orchard. Halo-halo na. But there are some orchards na nakaayos naman. Separate ang banana, separate ang dragon fruit, coffee, and minsan naman ina-alternate, but they are still in order. So it's relatively artificial, meaning hindi siya natural, hindi ka ng tao, inayos ng tao, being modified and controlled by humans. And that's why we are studying farm system, crop production. Marami tayong pinag-aaralan sa agriculture in order to modify and control these things in one objective na maka-reproduce natin ang mga bunga niyan, because our ultimate objective is again for human subsistence, because itong tao like what we'll be talking about later, ay hindi niya kayang mag-produce ng sarili niyang pagkain by his own. What I mean is, hindi katulad siya ng halaman na kahit hindi siya maglakad, kahit hindi siya gumalaw, nakakapag-produce siya ng sariling pagkain through its leaves, sunlight, water, air, no? Called photosynthesis, no? But animals would have to kill fellow animals, or consume plants, which eventually namamatay nga siya, in order to produce food. No? Yun ang pagkakaiba naman natin. So may mga terminology tayong ginagamit dyan sa manner ng papaano nabubuhay ang mga organism. So it contains fewer species and thus is simpler in its functioning. No? Konti raw ang species doon sa mga tinatawag nating agricultural ecosystem. Bakit ko konti? Kasi nga, ang tao, pakialamero, no? We try to eliminate weeds. Species din yun eh. So, alangan nga naman, ang cornfield mo ay maraming weeds, magkakaroon yun ng tinatawag na competition sa nutrients. So, we try to eliminate the weeds. Whereas also, yung mga insektong natural na andoon at saka yung mga dumayo lang doon na insekto na attract, andoon, but human will try to eliminate those things. So, kukonti ang natirang species doon sa mga ecosystem, agricultural ecosystem na minodify ng tao. Unlike if we go to big forest, no, ang daming species seen and unseen. So if we define ecosystem, but simpler is not really better. No? Sabi rito kasi ito yung simpleng definition ng ecosystem, pero sabi na pangit kung simple definition because an ecosystem complex kasi siya. A complex natural ecosystem with its many species operates with an intricate, magulo, kumbaga sa sinulid ay nagkabuhol-buhol na siya, intricate, web. Yan. Yun pa, intricate na web pa, no? Alam niyo naman yung web ng gagamba. Of interrelationship. So, intricate web of interrelationship. May mga nakikita tayong some organism depends on another. Some organism would thrive na magkasama sila mabubuhay. Yung isa naman, organism would eventually eat another organism to survive. At pagkatapos siya ay kakainin din naman ng higher type of organism na siya ang favorite na merienda, no? And so on, hanggang sa makita natin na mayroong hierarchy ang tinatawag nating living organism. Eventually, ang humans would fall on the top. No? Wala kasing walang kumakain sa tao. So tao daming kinakain pero walang natural na kumakain sa tao unless siguro we go back doon sa Jurassic time kung saan may mga dinosaur, baka tao ang kinakain ng dinosaur. Pero right now, nasa taas ng hierarchy ang tao. Spoiled ang mga tao, no? Takin mo, tayo pala ang highest. Kaya sinasabing highest form ang human because we are on the top of that cycle or yung kanyang hierarchy. They can be pictured in a very simple diagram like this. So ito naman, you can see here, there is a sunlight. And then sunlight would be a factor in the growth of plants, while plants are favorite ng several types of animals, including humans. At ang humans din naman ay favorite niya ang plants and animals as food. But plants would depend on soil. So this is the simple definition ng ecosystem. But if you draw it further, considering all other things and organisms, ay makikita mong it's not that simple. So there is a food chain. Yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, someone is eating someone, and that someone is being eaten again by someone until you go further to the point na wala nang kakain doon sa final consumer, which eventually, luckily for us, tayo yon humans. No? Walang kumakain sa atin. May kumakain when we die. Ano yung kumakain? O, di microorganism ulit. Dust to dust. Babalik ulit tayo into form of soil, no? Na may microorganism. Gagamitin uli ng mga plants. Tapos iikot ulit. So, kung mapapansin nyo, pag na-breakdown ng anything, breakdown chemically, no, umiikot-ikot lang. So we could be later, no, yung mga namatay would eventually simplify themselves into molecules, atoms, which will be consumed in parts and in whole by several organisms. So ikot-ikot-ikot lang, no, based on what we are talking about. Of course, there's another issue like the spiritual, no, the soul. So we will not be focusing on that, but we will just be talking about the biological. No? So there's some time to talk about the other side. No? So dito muna tayo ngayon, the basic anatomy or yung biological ng tao. No? So basic steps in food chain. Food chain, there's our plant use soil nutrients, no? Water, carbon dioxide or CO2. Ano ba yung CO2? Yan yung nilalabas ng tao. Kapag nag-exhale tayo, used oxygen, carbon dioxide. Eh siya naman yung ginagamit ng halaman through its leaves, coupled with sunlight and water to create their own food for themselves. And then in the process, they would release the oxygen, which would eventually kailangan ng tao. And so you could see the simple cycle of those basic chemical elements, no, na pinagpapalit-palitan natin, which in turn, everything would be simplified into chemical elements eventually. So sun's energy, they produce food that nourishes animals and humans, but there are few more vital steps. Like ito na, yung mas complicated in order to be sustainable, no? Like in this, dinagdagan to, plants, animals, and humans included would eventually turn into an organic matter. Kahit ganun kayaman, o kahit mahihirap, pag namatay, would eventually turn into organic matter. Then, those organic matter will be used by microbes or consumed by microbes. Tapos yung mga microbes would produce a good soil, type of soil, called humus. These are rich in microorganism na beneficial, na nagiging part siya ng soil. Kasi hindi lahat ng soil would be rich in humus. But if we want to have a good soil for plants to grow, we need humus galing sa microbes na dinicompose niya yung organic matter, na either the organic matter would be part of the plants, animal, including humans. You know? But all of those things would need an energy, no, from sunlight. Plants would need energy. Animals would need energy. Nakukuha ang energy sa sunlight din. Ano? Although we have food, no? Humans would not survive for long if we don't have sunlight. So, ganyan ka importante itong relationship na ito ng lahat ng mga bagay na ito, so that we call it everything here, the ecosystem would survive. Sana may forever. No? Sana magtagal itong ganitong relationship nitong mga ito. At kaya nga tayo ay ini-introduce natin ito sa inyo as early as you are, because we need to identify those things that could disrupt, no? Itong tinatawag na food chain na ito. Baka ito ma-disrupt At sinasabi na kapag na-disrupt o merong nangyari na hindi maganda, like nagkulang ang microbes, no? Na nagdi-decompose nito because humans ay very favorite na gusto mag-shortcut, gumagamit na ng iba-ibang chemicals para mapaganda ang soil, but in the process, killing the microbes that produces humus. No? So microbes right now, kapag siya ay konti na lang ang kanyang population, other forms of microorganism normally harmful would have the chance to multiply themselves na ma-over marang matatalo niya ito mga good microbes na ito so that diseases and unexplainable types of harmful effects to the soil contributed by chemicals would eventually hard for plants to grow, or even if they grow, they would have very challenging times ng kanilang pagpuproduce ng fruits or mismong yung kanyang whole parts, which in turn would affect the animals dahil ang animals depend rito, and likewise again, humans na naman would be affected also. Laging naandyan ang sun, but there are times in history that the sun, kahit siya ay nag-produce ng enough heat, hindi siya mag-penetrate because mayroong mga clouds na mahirap mag-penetrate ang sunlight. No? And then, anong nangyayari? Yung heat na dapat ma-dissipate pataas, na hamper nitong parang layer na ito, no? And so, ang mangyayari, yung heat na dapat ma-dissipate into space will go back to Earth as a form of heat. Mangyayari ngayon dyan, yung ating water system, the ocean, would eventually get heated. Alam niyo naman, ang tubig, kapag uminit ng konti, would produce vapor, at vapor would turn into severe rain, storm, typhoon that would eventually harm those that are below. So, ganyan-ganyan ang pwedeng mangyari. Yan ay nakikita na natin ngayon because people right now are very aware of what we call the climate change, no? So, iyan magandang dito natin pag-uusapan yung mga climate change na yan, but I really try to give you the basic, maintindihan natin yung to the lowest form, to the molecule level. Nasaan tayo ngayon? So here, you can see what I'm talking about, the food chain. You could see here that fungi, ito na yung halaman, kabutihan, mushroom, and other small varieties or uri ng fungi, amag, would consume itong mga decomposed matter na ito. And then grasses and other plants would be the recipient ng mga na-decompose ng mga ito. But grasses are favorite of insects like grasshopper. So they are considered as primary consumer, tagakain ng grass. But eventually, grasshopper would be lunch para sa mga frogs. They are called the secondary consumer, and frogs are favorite of snakes. But snakes, even they are poisonous, would fall prey into a hawk, an eagle. And when the eagle dies, again, will be decomposed, will be consumed by decomposer. And decomposer would be dependent. Ang grass again, ikot lang. So, yan yung tinatawag nating food chains. Of course, with each of the large categories, plants, animals, microbes, are dozens, hundreds of species, each with slightly different activities. In this example, forest, there are many types of trees, shrubs, vines, wildflowers, grasses, ferns, Moses, ito yung mga ang tawag sa Tagalog yan. Basta yun yung mga maliliit na damong kumakapit sa mga bato, no? I forget kung anong tawag sa Tagalog yan. Mushrooms, earthworms, roundworms, ants, beetles, flies, caterpillars, salamanders, birds, mice, squirrels, moles, raccoons, deer, coyotes, and so on. No? Some eat certain other species only to themselves be eaten by others in food chain. Kainan lang ang laban. No? At lahat ng yan, no, ang dami ng species na yan are part ng isang malaking community, isang malaking lugar, whether seen or unseen by human eye, called biodiversity or biological diversity. No? Because of a natural ecosystem has so many interactions among its species, it is quite stable, able to withstand disturbances such as a damaging storm or drought. So if one or several species are largely killed, no, there are others that can take over their function in the system. Thus, a natural ecosystem is sustainable, able to continue indefinitely. The variety of species in nature is often called biological diversity or biodiversity. No? Sabi nga dyan, kahit mabawasan yung isang species, may pumapalit do sa kanyang role. Kunyari, hindi na panahon ng tag-mushroom, meron namang ibang tagakain ng mushroom. Pero babalik uli sila because nasusustain. But itong the sad news is that merong some degree na ang biodiversity hindi na natin maibalik whether ito ay matatagpuan sa lupa o doon sa underwater. Like you have seen this destruction of corals, comparing their biodiversity 20 years or 50 years ago, may mga pakarami ng study that we absolutely lost a good percentage of the population nitong iba-ibang klase na ito. And the purpose of this study, this introduction to you, is for you to be aware na if we lost one of this species, if we lost one of their main function, there could be a disruption. There could be not good effect. At yan, napapansin na natin ngayon. So, you would be the sabi nga, guardian. If we, based on what the good book says, the Bible says, tayo ay mga stewards ng itong earth, no? Itong ibinigay ng creator sa atin. Human has the highest form of intelligence for the purpose of being a good steward nito. But nagkaroon din ng biodiversity ang human race at not all are good keepers. Some are destructible, no? Because na rin sa kagustuhan ng tinatawag natin na advancement, then nasasacrifice ang maraming mga biodiversity sa palibot natin. No? And I don't need to go further because as early as even siguro nung kayo ay elementary, you have heard the destruction of this parts of an ecosystem. Now, this is a formal introduction to you nitong ating kapaligiran which we refer to as an ecosystem. So, meron tayong tinatawag na natural na ecosystem, natural ecosystem. Also perform a number of functions that benefit humans called ecosystem services. Ano ito yung mga ecosystem services? Ito yung mga good things that we derive from the ecosystem like moderating the local weather, less extreme temperature and humidity, less severe flooding, kung ang ecosystem natin ay sufficient pa yung forest, no? Local weather, dahil tama pa ang init na dissipate sa space, walang hindi umiinit ng certain degree ang ating ocean. Ano? Cleaning up polluted water, control of plants, pests, and diseases by natural enemies, disposing of dead plants and animals, making the soil more fertile and pollination of many plants. In fact, we might say the human civilization would not exist without these free services of nature. Ito yung mga di binabayaran pero nai-enjoy natin. Free services. Uh, last week, no, may pinuntahan kaming isang estudyante, part ng NAIC subdivision, and ako naman pag pumunta sa bagong lugar, no, I would always scan the surroundings, look for developments, especially in agriculture. Thousands of hectares yung makikita mo ron na walang agricultural activity, walang tanim, vast land, kung meron man mga kogon, and at the end of the road is a huge subdivision, but it's a low-cost subdivision. I think ang mga bahay ay dikit-dikit, normally siguro mga 20 square meter ang estimate ko roon or less. Talagang, but one thing that I already noticed is iba ang init doon sa parte na yun ng Naik, Sabang yata nakakasakop doon, na malapit na rin sa Tansa and 13. Talagang ibang init compared dito sa Indang at itong upland. Talagang you could feel the difference. And the cause of that is the lack of trees doon sa lugar na yon, sa plain things na damo lang. But dito sa Indang, kayo naman yung nakapasok pa rito sa Kabsu, mapapansin nyo ibang-iba ang hangin, and those are the free things na ino-offer ng ecosystem. Free yan. Right now, dito sa amin sa Alulod, free na ang air condition. Sometimes nga I have to regulate the air condition na free because nakapakalamig sa gabi. I'll have to close one part of the window at bubuksan pa yung isa so that may free air pa rin, but not necessarily flowing into us, yung air, kasi parang sinisipon ako pagka direct yung air. So these are the things that are free services na ino-offer ng ecosystem. You will miss that, kung continuously itong mga ini-offer na ito ng ating biodiversity ay unti-unting mababawasan. We will feel the increase in temperature, the severity of typhoons, the floods, and minsan wala ka na makikitang mga wild birds na umiikot-ikot dahil wala na silang habitat. Yan yung mga hindi na natin makikita. That's why one of the objective ng Cavite State University is to more or less revive those free ecosystem services. Balik uli kayo sa Kabsu pagka pwede na. At sabi ni President, ang mga estudyante ay libreng magpasyal sa agri-ecotourism. One pass lang. Makita nyo lang. Susunod may bayad na. So it's not open for every day. Kung panahon na andun kayo, you probably have crossed the hanging bridge. Pero ngayon, ibang-iba na, maganda na siya. And these are the things na gusto nating ipakita sana doon sa mga taga-urban areas, particularly Metro Manila or Lowland Cavite. Hey, come here in the Kabsu at we will show the free services offered by ecosystem. You could feel the difference, the air, the freshness of air, tapos yung ang maririnig mo iba-ibang huni or sounds ng mga ibon. Tapos yung, ayun, na-post ko na yata sa inyo yung halaman na yun. I don't know how to call it, but the it's more of parang siyang rainbow color no? So, yan yung mga diversity na sana, in fact, kung yung pamamalita, kumuha ko ng 5 buto at aking itatry na sana ma-propagate ko, sana ay sumibol siya. No? Because itong mga ganito, walang nag-take care dyan no? Unless na by themselves siya ay i-pollinate niya yung sarili niya at dumami. No? Pero very seldom ko nakikita yan. Sa ilog, yan, minsan nakakakita ko niyan. Pero napakadalang. Sana sumibol itong aking kinuhang ibang. Huwag niyo pamamalita. Bawal yun Pero ako kasi ang objective ko is to I will help in the maintenance, kung maaari. Maaari nga, ganyan yung ating i-reproduce yung mga tinatawag nating mga obsolete, parang mawawala na no? And somebody has to take care of that. If the time will come na kayo ay actively pwede na bumalik sa Kabsu, visit it, at saka sana merong ilang lumabas sa inyo na yung mahilig sa halaman, especially mga yung bang halaman na indigenous, yung dito lang nakikita sa atin, magsimula lang kayong magustuhan sana yung mga ganyan. We would be appreciating those effort by small things. So, here is the one that I'm talking about, the agricultural ecosystem na pinakailaman ng humans. Siyempre, mga humans ay pakailamero. Sabi kasi sa Bible ay be the steward of earth. So, inayos naman niya. Nag-produce naman siya ng kaayusan. Like this one, is a very good ecosystem. But here, meron na siyang ginawang modification in terms of nutrients, application, control ng mga insects na harmful dito sa kanyang mga tanim. So, ito yung sinasabi kong agricultural ecosystem. But in contrast, the simplified agricultural ecosystem that we humans created have relatively konti na nga mga species, And especially in conventional farming system, just about any other species that dares to enter the field or barn is considered enemy. Yun, uubusin natin, daga, pag nakakita ng uod, patay ka agad, kalaban ng hayop ng tanim natin yan. Even mga manok na nakawala, patay yan kasi those are enemies. And pag pinag-aralan mo, these practices in large amount or in large activity would eventually disrupt the agricultural ecosystem. So, dapat balance lang. Dapat on the back of our minds, iisipin natin that when we apply poison to kill insects, baka merong nadamay pa na mga microorganism below ground. When we apply chemical fertilizer, baka ito ay maka-damage doon sa another ecosystem below ground. We do not know who would be the victims. At alam naman natin, the cycle na one would be eaten by another and another, and eventually eaten by humans, babalik uli ang epekto doon sa humans, we. So, kinakailangan, we must be aware. You as young people must be aware of these things that meron tinatawag dyan butterfly effect. Yung tinasabing butterfly effect, kapag ka ang butterfly o paru-paro ay pumagaspas ng kanyang pakpak, it created parang wave ng hangin. Yung wave ng hangin, mapakaliit kasi liit lang naman ng pakpakan ng paru-paro. But unseen, yung wave na yun would push another and another and another. until makaapekto siya doon sa iba. It could be, sabi nga nung iba, no, a simple swing ng butterfly wings could one day turn into a severe storm. Yun ang tinatawag na butterfly effect. May epekto siya to other things. Now here, ecosystems with few species are easily disrupted by outside forces. Kapag kaunti ng species, at yun nga yung farming ecosystem. An invasion of a crop pest such as aphids or caterpillars will likely spread and ruin the crop rather than being controlled by predatory insects, ladybug, wasps, or birds, as when the farmer leaves areas of natural ecosystem near his fields. Ang natural, yung pinakita natin kaninang food chain, somebody has to eat somebody. So, itong mga worms na ito, itong mga caterpillars, may mga natural feeders, birds. But kung makikita natin when birds go away, nga, maglalaro na ang mga worms o mga tinatawag nating mga larva na ito. Magdadami yan because wala ng natural predator. So, here, as I talked earlier, toxic chemicals and strong fertilizers against humus and soil organism. These are the things na sometimes we have to balance the understanding on the use of this. Kinakailangan yan ay maintindihan natin that below ground, and when these chemicals are washed away, they eventually go to rivers, lakes, and ocean, or seas and oceans, and even to the groundwater. What would be the effect? So the soil on conventional farms has often been nearly sterilized. Pag sinabing sterilized, talagang pinatay ang microorganism, kasi bata pa lang tinuruan tayo na dirty ang soil. Dirty ang kamay mo. Huwag mo ilagay ang hand mo sa bibig mo kasi dirty, humipo ka sa dirty things. So we try to sterilize. Hugas ka ng kamay, tapos sabon, alcohol, siyempre, lalo na ngayon, we try to sterilize everything kasi nga of the fear of the virus. So, even the soil, long before, ay na-sterilize ng toxic chemicals or strong fertilizer, and is often very low in organic matter. Yan. Kasi nga, organic matter ay decomposed by itong mga microorganism. And number one na dadalhin itong mga toxic chemicals na ito ay yung mga miniature organism in the soil. So, yan, hindi agad napansin yan until studies were conducted na ang reason why we are now deficient sa ating soil ay because of excessive use. And there was also some studies that I read na even human diseases, cancer, are not really caused alone by cancer cells, but rather a deficiency ng mga micronutrients. Ibig sabihin, yung kinakain natin pa lang, plants, fruits are deficient na sa mga micronutrients. At yung katawan ng tao also need micronutrients. Nag-proliferate niya yun, itong mga cancer cells, because wala na siyang natural na antagonistic na mga chemicals doon sa human body, dahil yung food that we eventually, hopefully, na magpo-provide nitong mga micronutrients for human health ay wala. No? So, ina-associate nila yan dyan. So, marami nga nagsasabi that the secret is in the soil. Ang nakikita natin upward is not really the secret, but it is in the soil. No? So, both humus, no? Alam natin yung humus, these are the decomposed parts, no? And large number of soil organisms work to make soil porous. Ibig sabihin ng porous, yung kanyang molecules hiwa-hiwalay so that air and water could penetrate. At alam naman natin, like the leaves, ang roots would survive only if there are air and water. When too much water, hindi siya drain, masusuffocate naman ang soil, ang roots because walang papasok na air or oxygen. Yun. Imagine niyo yung dalawang molecules o parang round, pag-ita niya space. Yung space na yon have to be filled by air and water. Pero hindi po pwedeng water lang lagi kasi wala nang papasok ng air. So, kinakailangan i-consider yung porous para yung water when madali siyang madrain so that air could penetrate in between. Basic yan, basic. Kahit kayo ay naghahalaman sa paso, basic yung information na yan that you need to think about spaces in between the soil parts. Ang nangyayari kasi kapag dilig ka ng dilig, yung ibabaw ng halaman mo, nagkikake, akala mo nagdilig ka, pero yung pala, nagra-run off lang. Hindi pumapasok sa loob ng paso mo yung enough water dahil matigas na yung ibabaw. Wala nang pumapasok na air. That's why yung mga practices ng mga old people, kinukultivate nila ang soil. The purpose of cultivation is that air and water would have enough spaces in between the soil. Again, the humus and the microorganism would protect roots from soil-borne diseases and pests. Maraming mga sakit down below, doon sa root level. Iba-ibang sakit yan na ating mga plant pathologists would determine kung bakit suddenly nagkaroon ng mga blight, mga sakit. Nakikita lang siya doon sa ibabaw pero nagsimula siya sa ilalim. Maraming klaseng mga harmful bacteria and different viruses na pwedeng dumami doon if the balance noong microorganism down below ay na-alter. Ang problema, ang solusyon na isip uli ng tao is chemical. Ano yung chemical? Fungus ang gagamitin ay mga fungicides. Ganon ang ating virus. Ang virus kasi hindi magamot walang gamot yan. So, again, isa-sacrifice mo yung plants na lang and reduce soil erosion. So, we would want to create healthy crops, but the secret should be on the soil. Healthy plants are able to resist, repel most pests and diseases by means of various processes analogous to the way our body immune system protects us from diseases. So, magkatulad lang ang protection na ginagawa ng human body at saka ng plants, kailangan merong immune system. Dapat ang plants, meron siyang enough na humus, good population of beneficial microorganism, sufficient din ng kanyang micronutrients would repel itong mga sakit na ito, just like humans. So eating a diet of healthful, nutritious food will keep us healthy and reduce healthcare expenses. It's a win-win system. Kaya nga, ito ay previous mga years back, inintroduce na sa College of Agriculture yung ating tinatawag na organic farming system. And nakapokus yan doon sa paggamit o pag-revive uli ng good soil, humus, organic way of controlling pests and diseases, and so many things. Produce healthy crops at healthy crops to feed the humans so that humans could survive as well. So, yan, atin yung mga organic. So, considering the many benefits of healthy crops, good soil, and a diverse ecosystem, it only makes sense for the farmer to do as much as possible or feasible to work with natural processes and receive the reward of better soil, plants, and animals. Higher quality crops and animals can also command higher market prices, making farming more profitable. And finally, this should be the last slide. Some ways a farm can be made to function in a more ecologically sound manner include the treat the soil as valuable resource. It is by improving its ability to grow healthy crops, reduce or recycle manure, crop residues, and or compost, avoid the use of strong fertilizers and toxic chemicals. That's why we are advocating the use of these principles, for us to survive, for us to uh, learn back the manner or the way that nature works. So, dapat yung ating mapapag-aralan in the future na siyensya ng agriculture, in crop production and animal production, kinakailangan naka-anchor siya pa rin dito sa ating tinatawag na ecosystem, considering that one thing could affect another. At sana ito ay maging very strong foundation sa inyo as a young student in agriculture. So, I think this will be the last slide, and many more. Pahaba pa itong lecture kong ito. And these are actually one of the foundation na kinakailangan maitanim ko sa inyo itong pagkakaintindi rito. All your other actions, activities in the future, your mindset should be anchored on this, especially in protecting, understanding those that are living below the ground, living up the ground, above the ground, no? Dapat maintindihan natin ang interrelations. So thank you very much for listening to me today. It's 9:28, no? Um, Other things na i-discuss ko sa inyo next meeting, or maybe I will post the continuation of this. This is very interesting, by the way. I want you to take a good understanding of this because this would lead you a long, long way in understanding agriculture. So thank you for listening. I would entertain one question before 9:30. You have question? Only one. It's 9:29. I am stop recording.